Sometimes the person you fear most is the one who shared your childhood. The letter was waiting for me when I got home from my shift. I'd worked 12 hours straight, a double at Mercy General, covering for another nurse who'd called out sick. My feet ached. My back hurt. My scrub smelled like antiseptic and sweat. All I wanted was a hot shower, leftover Chinese food from the fridge, and maybe an hour of mindless television before I collapsed into bed. But there it was, sitting on my welcome mat. A plain white envelope with no return address. My name written in careful block letters, Monique Carter. I stared at it for a moment, my hand still on the doorknob. Something about it felt wrong. Off. Who leaves letters on doormats instead of using the mailbox? Who writes in block letters like that, so careful, so deliberate, like they're trying to hide their handwriting? I picked it up slowly. The paper was ordinary, cheap, the kind you could buy at any drugstore. But my name, those letters were pressed hard into the paper. I could feel the indentations under my fingertips. Someone had written this with force, with intention. I unlocked my front door, dropped my purse and keys on the kitchen counter, kicked off my shoes. My feet throbbed with every step. 12 hours on the linoleum did that to you. I should eat, should shower, should sleep. But I couldn't stop looking at that envelope. I tore it open, too tired to be careful, too tired to wonder what I'd find. Inside was a single piece of paper, folded once. I unfolded it with fingers that suddenly didn't want to cooperate. 5 words written in the same block letters. I know what you did. The world went very quiet. I stood in my kitchen, my safe, familiar kitchen with its chipped countertop and the coffee maker I'd bought on sale at Target and the refrigerator covered in takeout menus, and felt something cold slide down my spine. What did I do? I read the words again and again. Like if I stared at them long enough, they'd rearrange themselves into something that made sense, something harmless. But they didn't change. 5 words, black ink on white paper. I know what you did. My heart started beating faster, that sick, fluttery feeling in my chest that came before panic, before everything spiraled. What did I do? What could I have possibly done that would make someone write this? Leave it on my doorstep like a threat, like a promise. I thought through my day, my week, my life, went to work, came home, took care of patients, paid my bills, lived quietly, carefully, invisibly. I didn't cause trouble, didn't make enemies, didn't do anything worth knowing about. So what was this? A mistake. It had to be a mistake. Wrong apartment, wrong Monique Carter. There were probably dozens of Monique Carters in this city. This wasn't meant for me, except it was on my doorstep. My exact address, my name spelled correctly. I turned the paper over, nothing on the back, just blank white space and the ghost of pressure where someone had pressed too hard while writing. Then I laughed, actually laughed out loud, the sound echoing in my empty apartment, too loud and too sharp and edged with something that wasn't quite humor. It was a joke, had to be. Some prank, maybe one of the nurses at work trying to mess with me. Keisha was always pulling stuff like this, leaving fake spider rings in people's lockers, switching out coffee for decaf, putting googly eyes on the medication carts. This was probably her idea of funny. Send the paranoid girl a creepy letter. See how she reacts. Haha. Very funny. I crumpled the paper and tossed it in the trash. Forgot about it before I even made it to the shower. Except I didn't forget. Not really. Later that night, lying in bed staring at my ceiling, I kept seeing those 5 words, kept feeling the weight of that envelope in my hand, kept wondering who had stood outside my door, who had touched my welcome mat, who knew where I lived. I know what you did. What if it wasn't a joke? Stop it, I told myself. You're being paranoid. It's nothing. You're just tired. But sleep didn't come easy that night. And when it did, I dreamed of block letters and blank white paper and someone standing outside my door, watching, waiting, knowing things I didn't even know about myself. My name is Monique Carter. I'm 26 years old. I've been a registered nurse for 3 years. I work night shifts at Mercy General Hospital in the cardiac unit. I live alone in a small 1-bedroom apartment on the south side of the city. I have an older sister named Tasha, who I barely talk to anymore. My mother, Miss Lorraine, passed away 2 years ago from breast cancer. This is my life. Work, sleep, repeat. Sometimes I go to the grocery store, sometimes I do laundry. Sometimes I call Tasha and we have awkward conversations where neither of us knows what to say. Sometimes I lie awake at night and wonder if this is all there is. I'm not complaining. I'm grateful for what I have: a steady job, a safe place to live, health insurance, no debt except my student loans, which I'm chipping away at month by month. I'm doing okay. Better than okay, really. Better than a lot of people. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm coming home from a shift and the streets are empty and the city feels like it's holding its breath, I feel lonely in a way I can't quite explain. Like there's something missing. Like I'm waiting for something to happen. But I don't know what. That feeling had been getting stronger lately. This vague sense of unease that followed me everywhere. At work, at home, in my dreams. Like someone was watching me. Like something bad was about to happen. I told myself it was just stress, just exhaustion, just the cumulative weight of too many 12-hour shifts and not enough sleep. I told myself I was fine. The second letter came 3 days later. I almost missed it. I was running late for my shift. I'd overslept. My alarm hadn't gone off. And I was frantically throwing on my scrubs and shoving a granola bar in my mouth while trying to find my car keys. I opened the front door and nearly stepped on it. Another white envelope. Same block letters. Monique Carter. I picked it up, my heart starting to beat a little faster. This wasn't Keisha's style. She would have revealed the joke by now. She couldn't keep a secret to save her life. I tore open the envelope right there on my doorstep. You can't hide from the truth. My hands started shaking. I looked around at the empty hallway, the other apartment doors, the stairwell at the end of the corridor. No one, nothing. Just fluorescent lights humming overhead and the distant sound of someone's television. Who was doing this? And why? I shoved the letter in my purse and ran to my car. I was already 10 minutes late. I didn't have time to think about anonymous letters or vague threats. I had patients waiting. I had work to do. But all through my shift, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Those words kept repeating in my head. I know what you did. You can't hide from the truth. What did I do? What truth? I hadn't done anything. I went to work. I came home. I paid my bills. I lived a quiet, boring, completely unremarkable life. There was nothing to know, nothing to hide. So why did I feel guilty? You okay, Monique? I looked up from the medication cart I'd been staring at for the past 5 minutes without actually seeing. Keisha was standing next to me, her arms crossed, her eyebrows raised. Behind her, the cardiac unit hummed with its usual nighttime rhythm, monitors beeping, ventilators whooshing, the distant sound of someone's call bell. Yeah, I said automatically, I'm fine. You sure? Because you've been holding that syringe for like 3 minutes and you haven't moved. I looked down. She was right. I was holding a syringe of saline, my thumb on the plunger, completely frozen. The clear liquid inside caught the fluorescent light, refracting it into tiny prisms. I'd been staring at it, seeing nothing, my mind a million miles away, thinking about those letters, about the words, about who might hate me enough to send them. Sorry, I said, setting it down with hands that trembled slightly. Just tired. Girl, you're always tired. But this is different. Keisha leaned against the counter, studying me with the kind of intensity that made me uncomfortable. She'd been a nurse for 8 years, 4 years longer than me. And she had that ability to read people that came from years of watching patients lie about their pain levels and family members pretend everything was fine when it wasn't. You've been weird all week, jumpy, distracted. You almost gave Mrs. Chen the wrong dosage yesterday. You never make mistakes like that. What's going on? The mention of yesterday's near miss made my stomach clench. She was right. I'd caught it at the last second, 5 milligrams instead of 50. But it had been close, too close. The kind of mistake that could cost someone their life. Nothing. I'm fine. Monique, I said I'm fine. My voice came out sharper than I intended, too loud. A patient in room 306 stirred in their sleep and I winced. Keisha's eyes widened slightly, hurt flickering across her face. Okay, she said slowly, her voice careful now, like she was talking to a skittish animal. Sorry I asked. She walked away, her sneakers squeaking against the linoleum floor. I watched her go, watched her disappear into the supply room, and felt immediately guilty. Keisha was my friend. One of my only friends, really. She didn't deserve to be snapped at. She was just worried about me, trying to help. But I couldn't tell her, couldn't explain the knot of fear that had taken up permanent residence in my chest. Couldn't admit that I was starting to jump at shadows, to see threats in empty hallways, to wonder if every person who looked at me knew something I didn't. I couldn't tell her I was starting to feel like I was losing my mind. But I couldn't tell her about the letters. Because what would I say? Someone's leaving me anonymous notes, and I don't know who or why, and it's making me feel like I'm losing my mind. She'd think I was being paranoid. Dramatic. She'd probably laugh and tell me it was just some kid playing a prank. Maybe it was. Maybe I was overreacting. I finished my med pass and went to check on my patients. Room 304. Mr. Johnson, recovering from a heart attack. He was sleeping, his chest rising and falling in steady rhythm, the heart monitor beeping softly beside his bed. I stood there for a moment watching him, thinking about how fragile we all are, how quickly everything can change. One moment you're fine, going about your normal life. The next moment your heart stops. Or someone leaves you a letter. Or your mother dies and your sister stops talking to you and you're 26 years old and completely alone. I shook my head, pushing those thoughts away. I was being morbid. I needed sleep, that was all. When I got home that morning, it was 7:30 a.m. The sun already bright and harsh through my windows. I checked the doorstep before I even unlocked my door. No envelope, nothing. Relief flooded through me. See, I told myself. It was just a prank. 2 stupid letters. It's over now. I went inside, deadbolted the door behind me, and finally let myself relax. I made coffee, ate some toast, sat on my couch in my scrubs, and just breathed. My apartment was small, but I loved it. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a kitchen barely big enough for one person, and a living room with just enough space for a couch and a TV. The walls were painted a soft gray. I had plants on the windowsill, succulents mostly, because I wasn't great at remembering to water things. A few framed photos on the bookshelf. Me and Mama at my nursing school graduation. Me and Tasha as kids, maybe 8 and 12, standing in front of our grandmother's house with matching braids and gap-toothed smiles. I looked at that photo sometimes and wondered where those 2 little girls had gone. When exactly we'd stopped being close. When the distance between us had grown so wide that we couldn't cross it anymore. Tasha and I used to be inseparable. She was my big sister, my protector, my hero. I remember one time I must have been 7 and she was 11. We were walking home from school, and these older boys started following us, calling us names, pulling my backpack, making me cry. Tasha had turned around, all 4 foot nothing of her, skinny as a rail, wearing her secondhand jeans and her worn-out sneakers, and stood between me and those boys like a wall. "You touch my sister again," she'd said, her voice steady and cold, "and I'll make sure everyone at school knows you pick on little girls. That's what cowards do." They'd laughed at first, but something in Tasha's eyes had made them back off. She'd stood there until they left, then turned to me and wiped my tears with the sleeve of her jacket. "Nobody messes with you while I'm around," she'd said. "Okay? You're my baby sister. My job is to protect you." And she had. For years, she'd protected me. From bullies at school, from Mama's bad moods when she was stressed about money, from the neighborhood kids who thought I was too quiet, too serious, too nerdy. Tasha had been my shield. She taught me how to braid hair, sitting behind me on our shared bed, while her fingers worked through my thick curls with infinite patience. She taught me how to talk back to boys who thought they were slick, who thought nice girls owed them smiles and phone numbers. She taught me how to make Mama's sweet potato pie, measuring out cinnamon and nutmeg, while we listened to old Motown records on Mama's ancient stereo. We shared a bedroom until I was 16. Twin beds pushed against opposite walls, clothes spilling out of our shared closet, posters of our favorite artists covering every inch of wall space. We stayed up late, telling secrets and making plans for the future. We were going to move to New York together, we'd decided. Get an apartment in Brooklyn. She'd be a teacher and I'd be a nurse, and we'd take the subway to work and meet for lunch in Central Park on Sundays. That was the dream, our dream. Then I went to college, and Tasha didn't. She'd wanted to go, had even been accepted to a few schools. I remember watching her open the acceptance letter from the state university. her hands shaking, her eyes filling with tears of joy and relief and hope. She'd been planning it for months, had her major picked out, had looked at dorm room decorations online, had made lists of classes she wanted to take. But Mama got sick 2 months later, and someone had to stay home to take care of her. Tasha was older, more responsible. The practical one, Mama called her, the one who always did what needed to be done, no matter the cost. I remember the night Tasha made her decision. I'd come home from a college tour, giddy and excited, full of talk about campus life and dorm rooms and freedom, and found her sitting at the kitchen table with Mama. Mama looked so small in her chair. The chemo had already started taking its toll. Her head wrap was slightly crooked, her hands shaking as she held her tea. "I'm deferring," Tasha said. Her voice was flat, empty. "Just for a year, until you're better." "Baby, no," Mama had said, tears in her eyes. "You can't put your life on hold for me." "It's not on hold, it's just delayed." But Tasha's hands were clenched so tight on the table that her knuckles were white. "Someone needs to drive you to appointments. Someone needs to be here. And Monique's still in high school. She needs to focus on her education." She looked at me then, across the kitchen, and I'd seen it in her eyes, that moment of choice, that terrible sacrificial choice. She could have said no, could have gone to school anyway, could have let Mama figure out another solution. But she didn't, because that wasn't who Tasha was. She was the one who stayed, who sacrificed, who put everyone else first. And I'd let her. I'd been too young, too selfish, too wrapped up in my own future to really understand what she was giving up, what it would cost her. I'd hugged her that night, told her thank you, told her it would only be for a year. But we'd both known it was a lie. Even then, some part of us had known Mama wasn't going to get better, that a year would turn into two, would turn into forever. And Tasha had known what she was choosing, had seen her future disappear in that moment, had watched her dreams die while mine stayed alive. She never forgave me for that. Never forgave me for being the one who got to leave while she had to stay. And maybe she was right to be angry. Maybe I deserved it. So she stayed. She deferred her acceptance, said she'd go next year once Mama was better. But Mama didn't get better. The cancer spread, and Tasha's 1 year deferral turned into 2 years, then 3, then permanent. She put her life on hold. She worked 2 jobs to help pay the bills. Cashier at the grocery store during the day, waitress at the diner at night. She drove Mama to chemo appointments every Tuesday and Thursday. She sat with her through the bad nights, when the nausea was so severe Mama couldn't keep anything down. She held her hand when the pain got too much, when the morphine barely touched it, when Mama cried and said she just wanted it to be over. And I was away at school, learning, growing, building a future, making friends, going to parties, falling in love with nursing, becoming myself. I came home for holidays, for summer break, for long weekends when I could afford the bus ticket. But it wasn't the same. I'd walk into our childhood home and feel like a visitor, like I didn't quite belong anymore. Tasha looked at me differently during those visits, like I was a stranger, like I'd betrayed her somehow just by leaving, just by getting to have the life she'd wanted. She never said it out loud, but I knew. I could see it in her eyes every time we talked. Every time I told stories about my classes, my friends, my plans for after graduation. I could see it in the way her smile never quite reached her eyes, in the way she'd changed the subject whenever I talked about the future. This simmering resentment, this anger she couldn't quite hide. After Mama died, the distance got worse. The funeral was small, just us, some of Mama's church friends, a few distant relatives who barely knew us. We stood next to each other at the graveside, but we might as well have been miles apart. I tried to talk to her afterward, tried to ask if she was okay, if she needed anything, if we could maybe get dinner and really talk. She'd looked at me with dead eyes and said, "I'm fine. You should get back to school. Wouldn't want you to miss any important classes." The bitterness in her voice had cut like a knife. We tried to keep in touch after that. We really did. But our conversations became shorter and more strained, more awkward. Text messages that went unanswered, phone calls that ended in uncomfortable silences, birthday cards that felt obligatory rather than heartfelt, until we were basically strangers who happened to share DNA and a childhood. Strangers who once loved each other more than anything, who once promised to never leave each other's side. I missed her. God, I missed her so much sometimes it physically hurt. But I didn't know how to fix what was broken between us. I didn't know how to bridge that gap, how to make her see that I never meant to abandon her, that I didn't choose college over her, that I didn't choose my future over mama. I just that chose myself. For the first time in my life, I chose what I wanted instead of what was expected. And Tasha had paid the price for that choice. So I stopped trying, and so did she. And now here we were, two sisters who barely spoke, who lived in the same city but might as well live on different planets, who carried the weight of everything unsaid between us like stones in our pockets. I wondered sometimes if she thought about me, if she missed the friendship we used to have, if she lay awake at night remembering the two little girls on those swings, back when everything was simple and sisterhood was permanent, or if she just hated me, resented me, wished I would disappear from her life completely. I didn't know. I was too afraid to ask. I was almost asleep. Finally, after tossing and turning for an hour, when I heard it, a sound, soft and quick, like something falling, I opened my eyes, staring at my bedroom ceiling. The afternoon sun filtered through my blackout curtains, creating thin lines of light across the walls. Everything was still, quiet. I must have imagined it. I closed my eyes again, started to drift off. Another sound, this time from the living room, a soft thud. My eyes snapped open. My heart started racing. Someone was in my apartment. I sat up slowly, careful not to make any noise. Listen. Tried to hear past the pounding of my own pulse. Nothing. Just the hum of my refrigerator, the distant sound of traffic outside. You're being paranoid, I told myself. There's no one here. You locked the door. You're safe. But I couldn't shake the feeling. That crawling sensation on the back of my neck. That primal instinct that something was wrong. I got out of bed, moving as quietly as I could. Crept to my bedroom door, pressed my ear against it. Silence. I opened the door slowly. Looked out into my living room, empty, everything exactly as I'd left it. My coffee cup on the table, my keys on the counter, my work bag by the door. I walked through the apartment, checking everything. The front door, still locked, deadbolt in place. The windows, closed and latched. The closet, nothing but my coats and shoes. No one, nothing. I stood in my living room, feeling foolish and paranoid and exhausted. I was losing it. The letters had gotten into my head, made me jumpy, made me see threats where there weren't any. I went back to bed, tried to convince myself everything was fine, but I couldn't sleep. The third letter came the next day. I found it when I got home from the grocery store, taped to my front door this time, right at eye level, like whoever left it wanted to make sure I couldn't miss it. My hands were full of grocery bags, milk, bread, frozen dinners. I stared at the envelope, a cold dread settling in my stomach. I wanted to leave it there, walk away, pretend it didn't exist, but I couldn't. I had to know. I set down the groceries, ripped open the envelope, pulled out the paper with shaking hands. I'm closer than you think. I spun around, scanning the hallway, empty, silent, but I felt it. That sensation of being watched, of eyes on me that I couldn't see. Who are you? I said out loud, my voice echoing. What do you want? No answer, just the buzzing fluorescent lights and my own rapid breathing. I grabbed my groceries, fumbled with my keys, and practically fell through my door. Slammed it shut behind me, locked it, deadbolted it, put the chain on. Then I stood there, my back against the door, my heart racing, trying not to cry. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't Keisha being funny. Someone was targeting me. Someone was watching me. Someone wanted me to be afraid. And it was working. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands, stared at it. Who was I going to call? The police? And tell them what? That I'd gotten 3 anonymous letters? They'd take a report, maybe. Tell me to let them know if anything else happened. But they wouldn't do anything, not for something like this. Keisha. No. She'd think I was overreacting. Tasha? I almost laughed. When was the last time I'd called Tasha for help? When was the last time she'd even answered when I called? I was alone, completely alone. I put my phone away, put the groceries in the fridge. made myself dinner, even though I had no appetite. Sat on my couch eating microwaved pasta and watching some mindless reality show, trying to pretend everything was normal. But I kept looking at the door, kept listening for sounds, kept feeling like someone was watching me through the walls. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed with all the lights on, my phone in my hand, ready to dial 911 at the first sign of danger. Every sound made me jump. The building settling, the neighbor's footsteps overhead, the wind against my window. Around 3 a.m., I finally gave up. Got out of bed, went to the living room, sat on the couch, and pulled up old photos on my phone. Photos of me and Mama, me and Tasha, the three of us together at holidays and birthdays and ordinary Sundays. Back when we were a family, back before everything fell apart. There was one photo I kept coming back to, taken at my high school graduation. Me in my cap and gown, grinning like an idiot, so proud and happy and naive. Mama beside me, beaming, wearing her church dress and her best earrings. And Tasha on my other side, smiling for the camera, but something in her eyes, something I hadn't noticed at the time but could see clearly now. Sadness, resentment, loss, but also something else, something that made my skin prickle, a kind of observation, like she was studying me, cataloging me, recording every detail for later. And then another memory surfaced, one I'd buried deep. I was maybe 10 years old. Tasha was 14. I'd woken up in the middle of the night. We shared a room then, our twin beds pushed against opposite walls, and found her sitting up in bed, just sitting there in the darkness, staring at me. I'd frozen, too startled to speak. Her eyes had been open but distant, like she was sleepwalking, or like she was awake but somewhere else entirely. Tasha, I'd whispered. She'd blinked, focused on me. Go back to sleep, Monique. Were you watching me? I was just thinking, go to sleep. In the morning, when I'd asked her about it, she'd claimed not to remember, said I must have been dreaming. But I hadn't been dreaming. I knew what I'd seen. There had been other moments, too, I realized now. Times when I'd turn around and find Tasha just there, watching, not saying anything, just observing me with that strange, unreadable expression. I'd always dismissed it as big sister protectiveness, her way of looking out for me. But what if it wasn't protection? What if it was something else? Stop it, I told myself. You're being paranoid. You're taking normal sibling dynamics and twisting them into something sinister because you're scared. But I couldn't shake the feeling. The growing suspicion that all those years ago, Tasha had been studying me, learning me, preparing for something I couldn't have possibly understood. I put my phone down and sat there in the dark, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. She'd been 18 then, just graduated herself the year before, had been planning to start community college that fall, but Mama had just gotten her diagnosis, and suddenly all of Tasha's plans evaporated. I'd gone off to university. 4 years of freedom and growth and becoming myself. And Tasha had stayed home, watched her dreams slip away, took care of Mama while I was off living my life. I'd never really thought about it from her perspective. I'd been too caught up in my own guilt and grief and relief that I got to leave, that I got to escape. Is that why she resented me? Because I got out and she didn't? Is that why we barely spoke anymore? I stared at that photo until my eyes blurred with tears. Then I put my phone down and sat there in the dark, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. The next morning, well, afternoon, since I'd finally fallen asleep around dawn, I woke up to my phone ringing. I grabbed it, disoriented and groggy. The screen showed Tasha's name. For a second, I just stared at it. Tasha never called me. We texted occasionally, awkward, stilted exchanges about work and weather and nothing important. But actual phone calls? Those hadn't happened in months. I answered. Hello? Monique. Her voice was tight, strained. We need to talk. My stomach dropped. What's wrong? Is something? No, nothing's wrong. She paused. I could hear her breathing. I've been thinking about us, about how we used to be. And I miss you. I miss my sister. Something about her tone made my skin prickle. It didn't sound right, didn't sound like Tasha. I miss you too, I said carefully. Do you? The question was sharp, accusatory. Because it doesn't feel like it. It feels like you forgot about me, like you moved on with your nice job and your nice apartment and your nice life, and I'm just. Her voice cracked. I'm just here, alone, with nothing. Tasha, that's not. You got everything, Monique. Everything I wanted. You got to leave. You got to become something. You got Mama's love and her pride and her hope. And what did I get? I got to watch her die while you were off becoming a nurse. Everything I wanted. The phrase echoed in my head. I'd heard it before, recently. Where had I? One of the letters, the one that said you don't deserve what you have. And underneath, in smaller letters, everything you have should have been mine. The same phrase, the exact same sentiment. My hands went cold. It was just a coincidence. Had to be. People said things like that when they were upset, when they felt cheated by life. It didn't mean anything, but the similarity made something twist in my stomach. Tears stung my eyes. That's not fair. Fair. She laughed, bitter and harsh. You want to talk about fair? Nothing about this is fair. Nothing about any of it. Tasha, please, I have to go. Wait. But she'd already hung up. I sat there holding my phone, my hands shaking, my heart pounding. That call hadn't felt right. It had felt calculated, deliberate, like she'd rehearsed it, like she'd wanted to hurt me. And then a thought hit me, a terrible, impossible thought that made my blood run cold. The letters, the timing, the things they said. I know what you did. You can't hide from the truth. I'm closer than you think. What if? No, no, that was crazy. Tasha wouldn't do that. She was my sister, my family. She wouldn't terrorize me with anonymous letters. She wouldn't try to scare me. Would she? I pushed the thought away, refused to let it take root. I was being paranoid. The stress and the fear were making me suspicious of everyone, even the people I loved. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. The letters kept coming. Every few days, sometimes every day. I'd find them in different places, taped to my car windshield, slipped under my door, left on my doorstep. One was even tucked inside my mailbox, even though the mailbox was supposed to be locked and only accessible to the postal worker. Each one was worse than the last. You think you're better than everyone. You don't deserve what you have. I watch you sleep. That last one made me physically ill. I stood in my kitchen, staring at those 4 words, and felt my legs go weak. Someone was watching me sleep. Someone was in my apartment or close enough to see through my windows while I was unconscious and vulnerable. I called the police that day, filed a report, showed them the letters. The officer who came was polite but clearly thought I was wasting his time. He took photos of the letters, wrote down my information, asked if I had any enemies, anyone who might want to harass me. No, I said. I can't think of anyone. Boyfriend, ex-boyfriend. No, I'm single. I've been single for over a year. Co-workers, neighbors, anyone you've had a conflict with recently? I thought about it, really thought about it. No, nobody. He wrote something in his notebook. Well, we'll file this report. If anything else happens, if you receive more letters, or if this person contacts you directly, or if you feel you're in immediate danger, call us. But in the meantime, there's not much we can do. No direct threats, no proof of who's sending these. But someone's stalking me. I understand you're concerned, ma'am. But until there's evidence of a crime or an explicit threat of harm, our hands are tied. Keep the letters, document everything, and stay vigilant. He left, and I was alone again with my fear and my unanswered questions. Things started happening in my apartment. Small things at first, things so subtle I thought I was imagining them, things that made me question my own memory, my own sanity. I'd come home from work and find the thermostat turned up. I always kept it at 68 degrees, cool enough to sleep comfortably after a hot shift, warm enough that I wasn't freezing when I got out of the shower. But I'd walk in, exhausted and aching, and it would be set to 75, hot, stuffy, uncomfortable. The first time it happened, I told myself I must have bumped it by accident. But it kept happening. And the third time I came home to a sweltering apartment, something inside me snapped. I stood in front of that thermostat and felt rage bubble up, hot and irrational and so intense my hands shook. This was my home, my space, and someone was deliberately making it uncomfortable. Not dangerous, not violent, just uncomfortable. Like they wanted me to know they could reach me, could touch my life in small petty ways. I wanted to scream. to punch the wall, to do something that would release this pressure building in my chest. Instead, I turned the temperature back down and took a photo of it, added it to my growing collection of evidence that I was either being terrorized or losing my mind. I wasn't sure which was worse. Then the doubts started creeping in. The kitchen cabinet would be open when I came home, the one above the sink where I kept my coffee mugs and tea bags, just hanging open, the contents visible. I'd stand there staring at it, trying to remember. Had I closed it this morning? I thought I had. I always closed it. But maybe I'd been distracted. Maybe I'd been running late. Maybe I'd opened it to grab my travel mug and forgotten to shut it. Maybe I was just tired, overworked, stressed, making mistakes I didn't remember making. The bathroom light would be on, casting a yellowish glow under the door. I'd stare at that strip of light and feel my certainty crumble. I checked the lights. I always checked the lights. Mama had drilled that into us as kids. Check the lights, check the stove, don't waste electricity. It was muscle memory now, but the light was on. So either someone had turned it on or I was forgetting basic things. Losing time, losing my grip on reality. Which was more likely? That someone was breaking into my apartment to turn on a bathroom light? Or that I was so exhausted I couldn't remember what I'd done 5 minutes ago? I didn't know anymore. And that uncertainty was worse than the fear. At least fear had an object, had a cause. This doubt was formless, insidious, eating away at my confidence in my own mind. My shoes were the breaking point. I kept them in a neat row by the front door, toes pointing toward the wall. A small thing, a nothing thing, but it was my system, my order in a world that felt increasingly chaotic. When I came home and found them scattered, one shoe on its side, another turned the wrong way, the whole neat row destroyed, something inside me fractured. I stood there staring at those shoes and felt reality tilt. Felt the floor become uncertain beneath my feet because either someone was coming into my home and moving my shoes for no reason except to unsettle me, or I was so disconnected from my own actions that I couldn't remember doing it myself. Which reality was worse? Being stalked or losing my mind? I sank down onto the floor right there in my entryway, my back against the door, and started laughing. It came out harsh and broken and edged with hysteria. My shoes. I was having a breakdown over my shoes. But it wasn't really about the shoes. It was about control, about certainty, about the feeling that the ground beneath me was turning to quicksand and I was sinking slowly, inch by inch, and no one could see it happening. Not even me. I started making mental notes, creating detailed inventories in my head of where everything was, how everything was positioned, taking photos before I left, the shoes, the thermostat, the kitchen counter, my bedroom nightstand. Creating evidence of the before so I could prove the after was different. My phone's camera roll became a gallery of obsession. Hundreds of photos of my apartment, different angles, different rooms, different timestamps, all trying to capture proof of something I couldn't quite name. But looking at those photos late at night, comparing the before and after, I couldn't escape the creeping doubt. What if I was imagining the differences? What if the shoes had always been that way and I just remembered it wrong? What if I was losing my grip on reality? What if the letters were right? What if I was the problem? I started to wonder if this was what going crazy felt like. This slow erosion of certainty, this constant second guessing of my own perceptions, this feeling that the walls of reality were becoming paper thin, ready to tear at the slightest touch. But no. Things were moving, things were changing. I wasn't imagining it. Someone was doing this to me. Someone was in my apartment when I wasn't there, touching my things, rearranging my life in tiny ways designed to make me doubt myself. It was working. "You look terrible," Keisha said one night during our shift. I was refilling the water pitcher in room 318. Mrs. Patterson, recovering from bypass surgery. She was sleeping peacefully, her family long gone for the night. "Thanks," I said dryly, not looking up. "I'm serious, Monique." Keisha moved closer, lowering her voice. Her hand touched my elbow, gentle. "You've lost weight. Dark circle under your eyes. You jump every time someone says your name." I set down the pitcher too hard. Water sloshed over the rim. "I'm just tired." "That's what you keep saying." She grabbed a paper towel, helped me wipe up the spill. "But this is different. This is..." She stopped, studying my face. "When's the last time you slept?" I opened my mouth, closed it, couldn't remember. "See?" Keisha's voice softened. Talk to me, please. I wanted to tell her. God, I wanted to tell someone. But where would I even start? With the letters? With the things moving in my apartment? With the growing certainty that someone was stalking me, watching me, waiting for what? What did they want? I'm handling it, I said quietly, my hands gripping the edge of Mrs. Patterson's bed rail. Handling what? I looked at her then, really looked at her. Saw the worry in her eyes, the genuine concern. Just some stuff, personal stuff. I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. I promise I'm okay. Keisha's jaw tightened. She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, then seemed to think better of it. Okay. She squeezed my arm. But if you need anything, I know. My throat felt tight. Thank you. She held my gaze for another moment, then nodded and walked away. Her footsteps echoed down the hallway, and I stood there feeling guilty for lying and relieved that I didn't have to explain the unexplainable. A few nights later, I woke up at 2 a.m. to the sound of footsteps. Not the normal building sounds I'd gotten used to. Not the neighbors overhead, the young couple who fought loudly every weekend and made up even louder. Not someone walking past my door on their way to the stairwell. Not the building settling or pipes creaking or any of the 100 familiar noises that filled the nighttime hours. These were inside my apartment. Someone was in my living room. The realization hit me like ice water. My eyes flew open in the darkness, my body going rigid under the covers. For a moment, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, could only lie there frozen, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat, in my temples, in my fingertips gripping the edge of my blanket. Listen, listen carefully. The footsteps were soft, careful, deliberate. Like whoever it was didn't want to be heard, but wasn't quite careful enough. Or maybe they wanted me to hear. Maybe they wanted me to know they were there, that they could get to me anytime they wanted. Pad. Pause, pad, pause. Moving slowly through my apartment, from the living room toward the kitchen, I could track their progress by sound alone. Past the couch, around the coffee table, into the kitchen, the soft squeak of a cabinet opening, a pause, the cabinet closing. They were going through my things. Right now, while I lay here paralyzed with fear, I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. The screen's blue light felt too bright, too visible in the darkness. Could they see it under my door? Could they tell I was awake? I pulled up the emergency dial screen, my thumb hovering over the call button. But what would I say? Someone's in my apartment? Would they get here in time? Would the intruder hear me talking and come for me? The footsteps had stopped. Complete silence. So profound I could hear my own ragged breathing, could hear the blood rushing in my ears, could hear the building's ancient heating system clicking on somewhere below me. Where were they? What were they doing? Then movement again. Closer now. Moving from the kitchen back toward the living room, toward the hallway, toward my bedroom. Oh God. Oh God, oh God, oh God. The footsteps stopped right outside my bedroom door. I stared at that door in the darkness, at the thin line of ambient light visible underneath it, waiting for the handle to turn, waiting for whoever was out there to come in, waiting to see the face of the person who'd been terrorizing me for weeks. My door had a lock. I'd installed it myself, a simple chain lock that wouldn't stop a determined intruder for long but might give me a few seconds, enough time to call for help, enough time to scream. But had I locked it tonight? I couldn't remember. I thought I had, I always did. But lately my memory felt unreliable, eroded by fear and exhaustion. Please be locked. Please, please, please be locked. The seconds stretched out like taffy, each one an eternity. The figure stood outside my door. I could sense them there, could almost feel their presence through the wall, and I lay in my bed, barely breathing, waiting. My phone screen had gone dark. I didn't dare move to wake it up. Didn't dare make any sound that might alert whoever was out there that I was awake, that I knew they were there. Maybe if I stayed completely still, completely silent, they would think I was asleep. They would leave. They wouldn't hurt me. The footsteps moved away, back down the hallway, back to the living room. I heard my front door open, the soft click of the latch, the whisper of hinges that needed oil. A pause. Then the door closed just as softly. and then nothing. I stayed in bed for another 10 minutes, too terrified to move. My whole body was shaking now, adrenaline flooding my system. My muscles locked so tight they ached. I stared at my bedroom door, watching for any sign of movement, listening for any sound that would tell me they'd come back. Silence, just silence, and the sound of my own panicked breathing. Finally, I forced myself up. My legs felt like jelly. I crept to my bedroom door, my bare feet silent on the carpet. Pressed my ear against the wood and listened. Nothing. I opened the door slowly. The hallway was dark. I flipped on the light, wincing at the sudden brightness. Looked out into my living room, empty. Everything looked normal, undisturbed. I checked the front door, locked, deadbolt in place. Chain on, I had locked it after all. I checked every room, every closet, every window, the bathroom, pulling back the shower curtain with shaking hands, the kitchen, opening every cabinet even though I knew no one could fit inside them. My bedroom closet, pushing aside hanging clothes to make sure no one was hiding behind them. Nothing, nobody. But someone had been here. I knew it, I'd heard them. They'd been in my apartment while I was sleeping, and somehow they'd gotten in and out without leaving a trace, without disturbing the locks, without breaking anything, like a ghost, like something that shouldn't be possible. But it had happened. I hadn't imagined it. I hadn't dreamed it. Someone had been here in my home while I slept, and they would come back. They always came back. I called the police again. A different officer came this time. She was younger, more sympathetic, but the message was the same. No signs of forced entry, no evidence of an intruder, nothing they could do. Maybe you were dreaming, she suggested gently. Sometimes when we're stressed or anxious, we can have very vivid dreams that feel real. I wasn't dreaming. Okay, well, if it happens again, call us immediately. While the person is still here, if possible. Sure. Call while a potential intruder is standing outside my bedroom door. That sounded like a great plan. After she left, I sat on my couch until dawn, too afraid to go back to sleep, too afraid to close my eyes. The apartment felt different now, contaminated, like the air itself had been poisoned by the intrusion. I couldn't stop shaking, a fine tremor in my hands that wouldn't go away no matter how tightly I clenched my fists. I tried to go to my bedroom to get dressed for my shift, stood in the doorway for 5 minutes, unable to cross the threshold. That room, my safe space, had been violated. Someone had been in there while I slept, had stood over my bed, had watched me, had touched my things. I couldn't make my legs work, couldn't force myself to walk through that door. Instead, I grabbed clothes from the laundry basket in the hallway, changed in the bathroom with the door locked. Checked the lock 3 times to make sure it was secure. At work that night, I kept zoning out, losing time. I'd be checking a patient's vitals and suddenly realize I'd been staring at the blood pressure cuff for 2 minutes without actually reading the numbers. I'd be charting and find myself staring at a blank computer screen, my hands frozen on the keyboard. Keisha touched my shoulder and I nearly screamed. Spun around so fast I knocked over a cup of coffee, sending it splashing across the nurse's station. Whoa, she said, stepping back, hands raised. It's just me. Sorry, I'm sorry. My voice didn't sound like mine, too high, too breathless. Girl, you need to go home. I can't. Where would I go? Back to that apartment? Back to that bedroom where someone had stood and watched me sleep? I called in sick the next 3 shifts, told my supervisor I had the flu. Spent those days sitting on my couch, too afraid to sleep, too exhausted to function. I'd close my eyes and immediately snap them open, heart racing, certain I'd heard footsteps. The derealization got worse. Sometimes I'd look at my hands and they didn't feel like my hands. Sometimes I'd look around my apartment and it felt like a stage set, like nothing was real, like I was watching myself from somewhere far away. I stopped eating. Food tasted like cardboard. My stomach was permanently clenched in a knot of anxiety. When I finally forced myself to try to sleep, I made it 20 minutes before the panic attack hit. Couldn't breathe, couldn't think, just gasping for air that wouldn't come, my heart beating so fast I thought it would explode, convinced I was dying. I ended up on my bathroom floor, head between my knees, counting tiles until the panic receded enough that I could move again. After that, I stopped trying to sleep in my bedroom, stayed on the couch, Dozed in 20-minute increments, never deep enough to really rest, never long enough to dream. My body started breaking down. Constant headaches, nausea, a tremor in my hands that wouldn't go away. I'd catch sight of myself in the bathroom mirror and barely recognize the woman staring back. Hollow-eyed, gaunt, looking 10 years older than I was. This was what they wanted, I realized. Whoever was doing this, they wanted to break me, to make me doubt everything, to destroy me from the inside out. And it was working. Then I remembered. The cameras, I'd installed them weeks ago, small ones hidden in the living room and kitchen. They recorded to an app on my phone, motion activated. If someone had really been in my apartment, the cameras would have caught it. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands, opened the app, scrolled back to 2 a.m. Motion detected, 2:04 a.m. My breath caught. There it was, proof. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't dreaming. I hit play. The footage was grainy, black and white, but clear enough. The timestamp in the corner read 2:04 a.m. My living room, empty and still. Then, movement. A figure entering from the hallway, wearing dark clothes. A hoodie pulled low. I couldn't see their face. They moved slowly through my living room, looking around. Not searching frantically, not rushing, just existing in my space. Like they had all the time in the world, like they belonged there. I watched, my heart pounding, as the figure walked to my bookshelf, picked up the photo of me and Tasha as kids, stared at it for a long moment, put it back. Then they moved to the kitchen. The camera angle shifted. I could see them opening my refrigerator, the light from inside casting their shadow across the floor. They took something out, I couldn't see what, and closed the door. The figure stood there for a moment. Then they walked back toward the hallway, toward my bedroom. The camera lost them there. My bedroom was uncovered. 5 minutes later, they walked back into frame, paused in my living room, turned, and looked directly at the camera. The world tilted. My phone slipped from my hands, clattering onto the coffee table. I tried to catch it, but my fingers wouldn't cooperate, wouldn't close. My whole body had gone numb and electric at the same time. I gasped a sharp, involuntary sound, even though I was watching it hours later, even though I was safe on my couch in daylight. But I didn't feel safe, didn't feel real. The figure's face was still obscured by the hoodie, still hidden in shadow. But they knew, they'd known the camera was there all along, had looked right at it, right at me. My vision narrowed to a tunnel, the edges of my sight going dark, closing in. I couldn't get enough air, my lungs wouldn't expand, wouldn't work properly. Breathe, 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 but I couldn't. My chest was locked tight, ribs constricting like a vice, like someone was standing on my chest. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the couch, knuckles white, trying to anchor myself. But the couch didn't feel solid. Nothing felt solid. Nausea hit me in a wave. I lurched forward, certain I was going to be sick. Pressed my hand over my mouth, swallowed hard, again, again. My ears were ringing, a high, piercing sound that drowned out everything else. I couldn't hear the refrigerator humming, couldn't hear the traffic outside, just that terrible ringing in my own ragged breathing that wouldn't slow down, wouldn't calm down. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely pick up my phone. Had to try 3 times before I could grasp it. The screen was still playing the footage. The figure standing there, staring at the camera, at me, and I couldn't look away, couldn't stop watching, even though every cell in my body was screaming to turn it off, to throw the phone across the room, to run. This was real. It wasn't my imagination. It wasn't paranoia. Someone had been in my apartment, had stood in my living room, had looked at my camera, had known I would watch this, had wanted me to see it, had wanted me to know they could get to me anytime they wanted. The evidence I'd been desperate for was right here, proof that I wasn't losing my mind. But God, I wished I was. I wished this was all in my head. Because the alternative, the reality that someone was doing this deliberately, systematically, carefully, was so much worse than madness. They stood there for 3 seconds, 4, 5, staring at the lens. Then they walked to my front door and left. I replayed the footage, watched it again and again, trying to see something, anything that would tell me who this was. The way they moved, the shape of their shoulders, their height, their build. Something about them felt familiar. but I couldn't place it, couldn't name it. The way they'd picked up that photo of me and Tasha, held it for so long, like it meant something to them, like they were remembering something. And their height, average, maybe 5'6", 5'7", not tall, not short. The same height as no. Stop it. You're seeing connections that aren't there. You're making yourself paranoid. But I couldn't unsee it. The familiarity in their movements, the deliberate way they'd touch my things. Not like a stranger would, like someone who knew me, knew my space, knew what mattered to me. I saved the footage, forwarded it to my email, sent it to the police with a message. Evidence. Someone was in my apartment 2 a.m. last night. Then I sat there, staring at my phone, thinking about that photo. The one the intruder had picked up. Me and Tasha as kids, on those swings, grinning at the camera. Why that photo? Out of everything in my apartment, why did they touch that one? Then I sat there, staring at my phone, feeling the walls of my apartment closing around me. They'd been in my bedroom for 5 minutes while I slept. What had they done in there? What had they touched? What had they taken? I went to my bedroom, looked around with fresh eyes. Everything seemed normal. My jewelry box closed, my dresser drawers shut, my closet undisturbed. But they'd been here, and I would never feel safe in this room again. I started sleeping with a knife under my pillow. It was a kitchen knife, nothing fancy, just the biggest, sharpest one I had. I wrapped the blade in a towel so I wouldn't cut myself by accident and tucked it between my pillow and the mattress. I also installed a chain lock on my bedroom door, the kind you can only open from the inside. I was turning my home into a fortress, but I still didn't feel safe. The memories started coming back around this time. Memories I hadn't thought about in years. Tasha and me when we were kids. The way she used to protect me. Walk me to school when I was scared. Stand up to bullies who tried to mess with me. Share her lunch when I forgot mine. But also the other memories. The ones I'd push down. The ones I didn't like to think about. The way Tasha would get so angry sometimes, out of nowhere. She'd be fine 1 minute, laughing and joking, and then something would set her off and she'd explode, screaming, throwing things, slamming doors. Mama said it was just teenage hormones. Said Tasha was going through a phase. Said she'd grow out of it, but she never really did. The anger was always there, simmering under the surface, controlled mostly, but always ready to boil over. I remembered once, when I was 14 and Tasha was 18, I'd borrowed her favorite sweater without asking. She found out and lost it. Completely lost it. She screamed at me for 20 minutes straight, called me selfish and inconsiderate and a spoiled brat. Mama had to physically separate us. The next day, Tasha acted like nothing had happened, smiled at me like everything was fine, but I'd seen something in her eyes that scared me, something cold and hard and unforgiving. I'd never borrowed her stuff again after that. And now, lying in bed, with a knife under my pillow, I couldn't help but wonder, had Tasha ever really forgiven me? For borrowing that sweater, for going to college while she stayed home, for getting the life she wanted, for being Mama's favorite, because I had been. I knew that. Mama loved both of us, but there was something special between us. We were closer. We understood each other. Tasha felt it too. I know she did. I saw it in the way she'd watch us sometimes, like she was on the outside looking in. Stop it, I told myself. You're being ridiculous. Tasha wouldn't do this. She's your sister. But a small voice in my head whispered, what if she would? One morning, I came home from my shift and found my apartment door unlocked. Not open, just unlocked. The deadbolt not engaged. I stood in the hallway staring at that door, my heart racing. I knew I'd locked it when I left. I always double-checked, triple-checked, especially lately. Someone had been here. Someone had unlocked my door. Maybe they were still inside. I didn't go in. I called the police from the hallway. Could anyone else have a key? A friend, family member, ex-partner? I started to say no, then stopped. Tasha had a key. I'd given it to her years ago, back when we were still close. Back when it made sense for her to have one in case of emergencies. In case I locked myself out or got sick and needed someone to check on me. Did she still have it? I'd never asked for it back, never thought to. Why would I? We weren't fighting. We were just distant, disconnected. But she'd have no reason to use it, no reason to come here. We barely spoke anymore, except the phone call 3 weeks ago. Her voice tight with bitterness. You got everything I wanted. You get to leave while I stayed. And those letters, the things they said. You think you're better than everyone. You don't deserve what you have. Things someone would say if they were jealous, if they resented you, if they watched you have the life they wanted and felt like it should have been theirs. No, 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 not Tasha. She wouldn't. She's your sister, your family. But family knew how to hurt you best. Family knew which wounds to press on. Family knew where you kept your spare key and your deepest insecurities and all the guilt you carried. My sister has a key, I said slowly, the words feeling like betrayal even as I spoke them. The officers exchanged a glance. Have you had any conflicts with your sister recently? I thought about that phone call, the bitterness in Tasha's voice, the accusations. We've been distant lately, but I don't think I stopped. What was I saying? I didn't think what? That my own sister was stalking me? Breaking into my apartment? But who else could it be? We can file another report, one officer said, but if someone has a legitimate key, there's not much we can do. You might want to consider changing your locks. After they left, I called a locksmith, had new locks installed that same day. It cost me $200 I didn't have, but I didn't care. At least now I knew no one else had a key. At least now I could breathe a little easier. Except I couldn't, because even with new locks, I didn't feel safe. Monique, we need to talk. I looked up from my lunch, leftover pasta I'd brought from home, and was eating in the hospital break room. It was 3 a.m. My feet hurt. My head hurt. I'd been awake for 21 hours and had 7 more hours of my shift to go. Keisha stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, her expression serious. She didn't wait for me to respond, just came in and closed the door behind her with a soft click. Sat down across from me. What's up? I said, trying to sound casual. Failed. The fork in my hand was shaking slightly. I set it down. She leaned forward, elbows on the table, waited until I met her eyes. Something's wrong with you, and don't... She held up a hand when I opened my mouth. Don't tell me you're fine, because I know you're not. You're jumpy. You're paranoid. You're losing weight. She paused, softened her voice. You look like you haven't slept in weeks. I pushed the pasta container away. Couldn't eat anyway. Keisha. What's going on? The fluorescent light hummed overhead. Someone's phone was ringing down the hall. I muffled through the closed door. I could hear my own breathing, too fast, too shallow. Tell her. Just tell her. Someone's stalking me, I said quietly. The words felt heavy, real. Saying them out loud made them undeniable. Keisha's eyes widened. She reached across the table, grabbed my hands. What? So I told her about the letters, about the things moving in my apartment, about waking up to footsteps, about my door being unlocked, about feeling watched and followed and terrorized. I talked, and she listened, her grip on my hands getting tighter and tighter until it almost hurt. When I finished, she was staring at me with horror written across her face. Jesus, Monique. She breathed out hard. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I pulled my hands back, wrapped my arms around myself. I don't know. I thought maybe I was being paranoid, imagining things. You're not imagining this. She shook her head, braids swinging. Someone is definitely targeting you. A pause, then carefully. Have you told anyone else? Your family? The question landed like a stone in water, ripples spreading out. Just the police, I said. My throat felt tight. And they can't do anything without evidence. What about your sister? Keisha's voice was gentle now. Too gentle. Like she already knew what I was thinking. Could she? No, I said quickly, too quickly. The word came out sharp, defensive. Tasha wouldn't do that. But even as I said it, I didn't believe it. Keisha looked at me for a long moment. Her expression said everything her words didn't. Are you sure? She asked very gently. I stared at my uneaten lunch, at my shaking hands, at the break room table that suddenly felt too small, too close. I don't know, I whispered. I don't know anything anymore. Keisha reached out again, squeezed my shoulder. Okay, we'll figure this out. I flinched before I could stop myself. Her touch, meant to comfort felt like too much. Like my skin was too sensitive. Like everything was too much. She pulled her hand back immediately. Hurt flickered across her face. Sorry, I whispered. I'm sorry. I know. She sat back, giving me space, studied me for a long moment. You know, when I was in college, I had an ex who wouldn't leave me alone. Showed up at my dorm, at my classes, sent me messages all the time, made me feel like I was being watched constantly. I looked up at her. She'd never mentioned this before. It messed me up, she continued, her voice quiet. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, started seeing threats everywhere. Every guy who looked at me, I thought it was him. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. I felt crazy, like I was making it all up. Like it wasn't that bad. What did you do? I got a restraining order, changed my number, changed my schedule, told everyone I knew what was happening so someone would notice if I went missing. She paused, and I saw a therapist. Because feeling crazy and actually being crazy are two different things. Someone was stalking you. That's real. Your fear is real. Your trauma is real. You're not making it up. Her words hit something deep, made my eyes sting with tears I'd been holding back for days. I don't know who to trust anymore, I said, my voice cracking. I don't even know if I can trust myself. You can trust me, Keisha said firmly. She didn't reach for me again, respecting the boundary I'd set. But her presence, solid, certain, felt like an anchor. Whatever you need, whenever you need it, I'm here. Even if it's family? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Even if the person doing this is someone I'm supposed to love? Keisha's expression shifted. Understanding dawned in her eyes. Your sister? I couldn't say it out loud, couldn't make that accusation real. But the silence was answer enough. Oh, honey. Keisha shook her head slowly. That makes it so much worse, doesn't it? Because if it's her, then everything you believed about your relationship, about your family, it's all a lie. I don't know for sure, I said quickly. I could be wrong. I could be seeing connections that aren't there. Or you could be right, and you need to prepare for that possibility. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the warm break room. How do you prepare for something like that? You protect yourself first. You get evidence. You tell people. You don't let fear make you silent. She leaned forward, her voice intense. And you remember that their actions aren't your fault. Even if it is your sister. Even if she has reasons for being angry. What she's doing to you, if she's doing it, is a choice. Her choice, not yours. But I didn't see how that made it hurt any less. That night, I went to my neighbor's apartment. His name was Aiden. He lived 2 doors down. We'd exchanged pleasantries in the hallway a few times, but had never really talked. He was in his early 30s, worked from home doing something with computers, seemed nice enough. I knocked on his door at 9 p.m., right after I got home from work. Hoped I wasn't bothering him. He answered wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, looking surprised. Hey, Monique, right? Yeah, hi. Sorry to bother you, but I hesitated. This was going to sound crazy. Have you noticed anyone hanging around our floor lately? Anyone who doesn't live here? He frowned. What do you mean? Just, I've been having some issues. Someone's been leaving me weird notes, and I think they might be getting into my apartment. I was wondering if you'd seen anyone suspicious. His expression shifted from confusion to concern. Shit. No, I haven't noticed anyone, but I'm home most days. I can keep an eye out if you want. Would you? I know it's a lot to ask. No, it's cool. That's creepy as hell. Have you called the police? Yeah, multiple times. They can't do much without evidence. Damn. He ran a hand through his hair. Look, if you ever feel unsafe or need anything, just knock, okay? I'm usually home. Thank you, really. As I walked back to my apartment, I felt marginally better. At least someone knew what was happening. At least I wasn't completely alone. But that small comfort evaporated when I opened my door and saw it. Another letter. Sitting on my kitchen counter, inside my apartment. Someone had been inside again. Despite the new locks. Despite my precautions. They'd gotten in, and they'd left me a message. I picked up the letter with shaking hands, tore it open. You can't lock me out. I backed up until I hit the wall, slid down to the floor, and finally let myself cry. I bought cameras, small ones, the kind you can hide easily. I put one in the living room, angled toward the front door, one in the kitchen, one in the hallway. I didn't tell anyone, not the police, not Keisha, not even Aiden. I just wanted to know, needed to know, who was doing this to me. The cameras recorded to an app on my phone. I checked it obsessively. Every time I left the apartment, every hour during my shift, every few minutes when I was trying to sleep. For 3 days, nothing. Then, on the fourth day, I got an alert. I was at work, in the middle of giving Mr. Rodriguez's evening meds. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I excused myself, went to the supply room, pulled out my phone with shaking hands. Motion detected in living room. I opened the app, pulled up the live feed. Someone was in my apartment. I watched, my heart pounding, as a figure moved through my living room. They were wearing dark clothes, a hoodie. I couldn't see their face. They walked slowly, deliberately, looking around, touching things. They picked up a photo frame from my bookshelf, studied it, put it back. Then they moved toward the kitchen, opened drawers, closed them, opened the refrigerator, took something out. I couldn't see what. They were just existing in my space, like they belonged there, like it was their apartment and not mine. I wanted to call the police. But what would I say? Someone's in my apartment right now? Would they even get there in time? I kept watching. The figure moved down the hallway toward my bedroom, went inside. The camera didn't cover my bedroom. I'd thought about putting one in there, but it felt too invasive, too creepy. Now I regretted that decision. They were in my bedroom for maybe 5 minutes. Then they came back out, walked back to the living room, stood there for a moment, facing the camera, looking right at it, like they knew it was there, like they were showing me they didn't care. Then they walked to the front door, opened it, and left. I sat in the supply room, staring at my phone, my whole body shaking. I rewound the footage, watched it again, tried to see the person's face, any identifying features, but I couldn't. The hoodie obscured everything, except there was something familiar about the way they moved, the shape of their shoulders, the way they walked. No, I was imagining it. I was seeing what I was afraid to see, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I knew that person. I went home early, told my supervisor I was sick, drove home at 90 miles an hour, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. The apartment was empty when I arrived. The door was locked. Everything looked normal, but they'd been here. I knew they had. I went to my bedroom, looked around. Everything seemed fine, nothing obviously disturbed. Then I saw it. My jewelry box. It was open. Just slightly. I always kept it closed. I walked over, opened it fully. One of my necklaces was missing. A silver chain with a small heart pendant. Mama had given it to me for my 18th birthday. I wore it sometimes when I wanted to feel close to her. It was gone. They'd taken it. This wasn't just about scaring me anymore. They were taking my things, personal things, things that mattered. I sat on my bed, that necklace's absence feeling like a hole in my chest. And for the first time, I let myself really think about what I'd been avoiding. The person who'd been terrorizing me, knew what mattered to me, knew how to get to me. And there was only one person I could think of who fit that description: Tasha. I sat on my couch for 2 hours, staring at my phone before I finally worked up the courage to call her. Tasha's contact was still in my phone. I'd never deleted it, even after everything, even after all the distance. Her name sat there in my contacts list like a landmine I kept almost stepping on and pulling back from at the last second. I pulled up her number, stared at it, put the phone down, picked it up again. What would I even say? How do you ask your sister if she's been stalking you? How do you accuse the person who raised you, protected you, loved you of trying to destroy you? And what if I was wrong? What if this was all in my head and I was about to ruin what was left of our relationship by accusing her of something she didn't do? But what if I was right? I thought about our last real conversation. 3 years ago, at Mama's funeral, we'd stood beside each other at the graveside, close enough to touch, but miles apart. I'd tried to hold her hand. She'd pulled away. "I can't do this right now," she'd said, her voice hollow. "Dead. I just can't." I'd thought she meant the funeral, the grief, the loss of Mama. But maybe she'd meant us. Maybe she'd meant she couldn't pretend anymore that things were okay between us. Couldn't keep swallowing her resentment and anger and pain. Maybe that was the day she'd decided to make me understand, to make me feel what she'd felt all those years. My thumb hovered over the call button. Last chance to back out. Last chance to keep pretending. Last chance to avoid the truth. But I was so tired of pretending, so tired of fear, so tired of not knowing. I pressed call. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times, 4. Maybe she wouldn't answer. Maybe that would be easier. Monique? Her voice confused and wary. Why are you calling? Not hello. Not how are you. Just that immediate defensiveness, that assumption that something must be wrong for me to be calling her. And maybe she was right. I called her that night. My hands were shaking as I pulled up her contact. I almost didn't go through with it, almost hung up before it started ringing. But I needed to know. She answered on the third ring. Monique? Hey. My voice sounded strangled. Are you busy? Not really. Why? What's wrong? I wanted to talk about us, about everything. Silence. Then, okay. I know things have been weird between us since Mama died, since before that, really. And I'm sorry for not being there more, for leaving you to deal with everything alone. It's fine. It's not fine, Tasha. It's not. And I should have said this a long time ago. I'm sorry. More silence. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. Tasha, are you okay? Do you remember when you left for college? She said suddenly. Her voice was different, colder. Do you remember what you said to me? I tried to think back, couldn't remember. What did I say? You said you couldn't wait to start your new life. You were so excited, so ready to leave. And I was happy for you. I really was, but her voice cracked. But I wanted to leave too. I wanted a new life too. And I couldn't have it because someone had to stay. Someone had to take care of Mama. I know, I'm so. And you never even asked if I was okay. You never asked what I gave up. You just left. You gotta be free while I was trapped. Tears were streaming down my face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Are you? The question was sharp. Or are you just sorry now because you feel guilty? Both, okay? I feel guilty because I should. Because you're right. I left and you stayed, and that wasn't fair. No, it wasn't. Tasha, I took a breath, decided to just say it. Have you been to my apartment recently? Pause. What? Have you been coming to my apartment, leaving me notes? What are you talking about? Someone's been stalking me, leaving me anonymous letters, breaking into my apartment, and I thought maybe you thought it was me. Her voice was ice. You think I'm stalking you? I don't know what to think. I'm scared and confused, and I don't know who else it could be. So you just decided to accuse your own sister? The sister you abandoned? That's not. I don't want to talk to you right now. Tasha, please. She hung up. I sat there with my phone in my hand, crying so hard I couldn't breathe. I'd made everything worse, so much worse. But I still didn't know the truth. I still didn't know if she was lying. The letters got worse after that phone call. You're selfish. You're a terrible sister. You destroyed my life. They were more personal now, more specific. Like whoever was writing them knew about my conversation with Tasha. Like they'd been listening. Or like Tasha had been writing them all along. I stopped sleeping, stopped eating, lost more weight, started missing shifts at work. My supervisor called me in for a meeting, asked if everything was okay, suggested I take some time off, get some help. I said I was fine, went back to work, did my job on autopilot, but I wasn't fine. I was breaking, slowly, completely. One night, I don't remember which night, they all blurred together. I woke up to someone standing in my bedroom. Not a dream, not my imagination. Someone was actually there. I could see their silhouette in the doorway, backlit by the hallway light, standing perfectly still, watching me. I opened my mouth to scream. Nothing came out. My voice was gone, trapped in my throat. The figure didn't move, just stood there, watching. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, fumbled for it in the dark, found it, hit the emergency button. The figure turned and walked away. I heard my front door open and close. By the time the police arrived 20 minutes later, whoever it was long gone. The new cameras I'd installed had mysteriously stopped working, all of them, at the same time. The officers took another report, said all the same things. No evidence, no way to prove anything. Be vigilant, stay safe. I didn't feel safe. I didn't think I'd ever feel safe again. Monique, you need to leave. Keisha found me in the break room during our shift. I was sitting in the corner, hugging my knees, rocking slightly. I didn't remember how I'd gotten there. I can't, I whispered. I have patience. Sophia's covering for you. Come on. I'm taking you home. I don't want to go home. Then we'll go to my place. But you can't stay here. You're in no condition to work. She drove me to her apartment, made me tea, sat me on her couch, waited until I stopped shaking. You need to talk to someone, she said gently. A therapist, a counselor, someone. I'm not crazy. I didn't say you were crazy. I said you need help. This is trauma, Monique. What you're experiencing, it's real. Someone is terrorizing you, and you need support to deal with it. I started crying again. It seemed like all I did anymore was cry. I think it's my sister, I said between sobs. I think Tasha's doing this to me. Why would she do that? Because she hates me, because I got the life she wanted, because I left and she stayed and took care of Mama, and now Mama's gone and she has nothing and I have everything and okay. Keisha pulled me into a hug. Even if it is her, and I'm not saying it is, you still need to protect yourself. You need to get out of that apartment, stay somewhere else for a while, somewhere safe. I don't have anywhere else to go. You can stay here as long as you need. I pulled back, looked at her. Really? Really? You're my friend, Monique. I'm not going to let you go through this alone. I stayed at Keisha's place for 3 days, slept on her couch, tried to feel normal, but I couldn't. Because my apartment was still there, my life was still there, and whoever was stalking me wasn't going to stop just because I was hiding. On the third day, I went back in the middle of the afternoon, when it was bright and sunny and I thought maybe I'd feel brave enough. I unlocked my door, stepped inside. Everything was wrong. Not obviously, not in a way I could point to and explain, but everything felt wrong. I walked through my apartment slowly, looking at everything, trying to figure out what was different. Then I saw it on my kitchen table. A photo. It was an old photo, one from our childhood. Me and Tasha, maybe 7 and 11, at the park. Someone, probably Mama, had taken the picture. We were on the swings, mid-air, grinning at the camera. Except in this photo, my face had been crossed out, scribbled over with black marker until I was just a dark blur. And underneath, written in those familiar block letters, it should have been you. I backed away from the table, my breath coming in short gasps, my vision tunneling. This was it, the proof I'd needed, the confirmation. Someone wanted me dead, and I was pretty sure I knew who. I came home early, 2 days later, not on purpose. My shift had been canceled, some kind of staffing issue, too many nurses, not enough patients. They'd sent me home with apologies and promises that I'd get my full hours next week. I was relieved. I'd been working double shifts for weeks, running on fumes and fear, barely keeping it together. An unexpected night off felt like a gift. I got home around 6 p.m. The sun was setting, casting long shadows through my apartment windows. I unlocked my door, stepped inside, and knew immediately that something was wrong. The air felt different, disturbed, like someone had just been here. I stood in the doorway, every muscle tense, listening. A sound, soft, coming from my bedroom. Someone was here, right now, in my apartment. My first instinct was to run, to back out and call the police and wait for them to handle it, but something stopped me. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was just the need to finally know the truth. I walked quietly down the hallway, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Each step felt like walking through water. Slow, heavy, impossible. I reached my bedroom door. It was half open. I could see movement inside, someone going through my dresser drawers, opening them, closing them, searching for something. I pushed the door open slowly. The figure spun around and I saw her face. Tasha. The word came out flat, distant, like I was hearing myself speak from very far away. My sister stood in my bedroom, frozen mid-motion, her hand still in my dresser drawer. For a moment, neither of us moved, neither of us spoke. We just stared at each other across the space that used to be mine and now felt like a crime scene. Then I saw what she was holding: a stack of envelopes, the anonymous letters, all of them. She'd kept copies. Monique. Her voice was shaking, but not with fear, with something else: adrenaline, panic. You're not supposed to be home. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My brain was trying to process what my eyes were seeing, but nothing was connecting. This was Tasha, my sister, the person who'd protected me as a kid, who'd stood between me and bullies, who'd taught me how to braid my hair. This was Tasha, in my apartment, going through my things, holding evidence of the campaign of terror that had nearly destroyed me. What? My voice cracked. What are you doing here? She set the letters down on my dress slowly, too slowly, like she was trying not to startle me or trying to buy time to think. I can explain, she said. Can you? The question came out sharper than I intended. Can you explain why you're in my apartment? Why you're going through my things? Why you have. I pointed at the letters, my hand shaking. Why you have those? Monique, please. Were you looking for something? Did you forget one of your little notes? My voice was rising now, all the fear and exhaustion and anger of the past weeks pouring out. Were you planning to leave another threat? Another reminder that someone's watching me? It's not. She stopped, took a breath. Her hands were clenching and unclenching at her sides. It's not like that. Then what is it like? Explain it to me. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my sister has been stalking me. I wasn't. The letters were you. Not a question. A statement, cold, hard, undeniable. She didn't answer, just stood there, her eyes filling with tears. The things moving in my apartment, the footsteps at night, breaking in while I slept. Each word felt like pulling teeth. That was all you. Monique, answer me. I was shouting now, not caring if the neighbors heard. Was it you? Yes. The word came out as a whisper, then louder, defiant. Yes, okay. Yes, it was me. The room tilted. Even though I'd known, some part of me had known for days, maybe weeks, hearing her admit it was different, hearing her say it out loud made it real in a way nothing else had. I backed up until I hit the wall, slid down to the floor, couldn't hold myself up anymore. Why? The word came out broken. Why would you do this to me? Tasha's face crumpled. She pressed her hands over her mouth, shoulders shaking, tears streaming down her face. I didn't mean for it to go this far. She couldn't finish, just stood there crying. That's not an answer. I wanted you to understand. The words burst out of her like they'd been bottled up too long, too tight. I wanted you to know what it feels like. What feels like? To be scared, she was shouting now too. Both of us yelling in my small bedroom like we were kids again, fighting over something stupid and petty, except this wasn't stupid and it wasn't petty and we weren't kids anymore. To be confused, to feel like your whole life is falling apart and you don't know why. To be so alone you think you're going crazy. So you decided to make me feel that way. I wanted you to feel just a little bit of what I've felt every single day since you left. Her voice cracked. Just a fraction of it. That fear, that confusion, that helplessness. I wanted you to understand what you did to me. What I did to you. I was on my feet again without realizing it, my body moving before my brain caught up. I took a step toward her, then another. I went to college, Tasha. I got a degree. I built a life. How is that something I did to you? She backed away from me, nearly stumbling over my laundry basket. Her hip caught the edge of my dresser, and a jewelry box toppled, spilling necklaces and earrings across the floor. Neither of us moved to pick them up. Because I wanted that life. She was crying harder now, words coming out in gasps. She grabbed the dresser to steady herself, knuckles white. That was supposed to be my life. I was supposed to go to college. I was supposed to have a career and an apartment and a future. But I gave it all up. I stayed home. I took care of Mama while you got everything you wanted. I didn't ask you to do that. Someone had to. She pushed off from the dresser, closing the distance between us again. We were only a few feet apart now, close enough that I could see the mascara streaking down her face, close enough to see how broken she was. Someone had to stay. Someone had to sacrifice their dreams. And it was me, always me, because you were younger, because you had potential, because Mama wanted you to have opportunities she never had. I moved sideways, putting the bed between us, creating space, distance. That's not fair. Fair? She grabbed one of my pillows and hurled it across the room. It hit the wall with a soft thud. You want to talk about fair? Nothing about this is fair. Nothing about any of it. Her hands were shaking. She gripped the bed frame like she might collapse without it. You got everything, Monique, everything I ever wanted. She was swaying slightly now, exhausted from the emotional onslaught. And I got to watch you have it while I had nothing. Someone had to. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, mascara smearing. Someone had to stay. Someone had to sacrifice their dreams. And it was me, always me, because you were younger, because you had potential, because Mama wanted you to have opportunities she never had. That's not fair. Fair? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Just bitter, jagged edges. You want to talk about fair? Nothing about this is fair. Nothing about any of it. You got everything, Monique. Everything I ever wanted. And I got to watch you have it while I had nothing. We stood there, both of us breathing hard, both of us crying, years of resentment and hurt and misunderstanding filling the space between us. Do you know what the worst part is? Tasha's voice was quiet now, defeated. The worst part is that I still love you. You're still my little sister, the girl I used to protect, the girl I would have done anything for. Her voice broke completely. And I hate myself for what I did to you. I hate that I let my anger turn me into this person. But I didn't know how else to make you see me. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in years, and I saw how broken she was, how lost, how hurt. The big sister who'd protected me was gone, replaced by this stranger who'd terrorized me because she didn't know how else to say she was drowning. I see you now, I said quietly. My throat felt raw. But Tasha, this wasn't the way. This was never the way. I know. You need help, professional help. What you did, what you've been doing, it's not okay. It's not normal. You scared me so badly I thought I was losing my mind. I know. She sank down onto my bed, head in her hands. I know. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this. I know that too. Silence, heavy, suffocating. I can't forgive you, I said finally. Not right now, maybe not ever. You broke something between us that I don't think can be fixed. She nodded without looking up. I understand. You need to leave. You need to leave right now, and you need to stay away from me. Monique, I mean it, Tasha. My voice was steady now, cold. If you come near me again, if you contact me, if you send me one more letter, I'm calling the police. I'm pressing charges. I'm doing whatever I have to do to protect myself. Do you understand? She looked up at me then. Her face was destroyed. Red, swollen, broken. Okay, give me your key. What? Your key to my apartment. Give it to me now. She fumbled in her pocket, pulled out a key ring, worked one key off with shaking fingers, held it out to me. I took it without touching her hand. Now leave. She stood slowly, walked past me, giving me a wide berth like I might lash out. Stopped at my bedroom door. For what it's worth, she said without turning around, her voice barely audible. I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted you to feel something. Anything. I wanted you to see that I was still here, still your sister, still needing you. I know, I said, but that doesn't change what you did. She walked out. I heard my front door open, close, her footsteps in the hallway, getting fainter and fainter until they were gone. And I stood in my bedroom, surrounded by the evidence of her obsession, and finally let myself collapse. I called the police that night, told them everything, showed them the letters, showed them the photos Tasha had left, told them about the break-ins, the stalking, all of it. They took a report, said they'd follow up with Tasha, asked if I wanted to press charges. I said yes. It felt like a betrayal, pressing charges against my own sister, but it also felt necessary. Like the only way to make her understand how serious this was, how much damage she'd done. The detective who took my statement was sympathetic. These family situations are always the hardest, she said, but you're doing the right thing. What your sister did, that's criminal stalking, criminal harassment, breaking and entering. These are serious charges. Will she go to jail? That depends. If she has no prior record, she'll probably get probation, mandatory counseling, a restraining order. But yes, there will be consequences. I nodded, tried to feel something satisfaction, relief, justice. But all I felt was empty. Over the next few weeks, I tried to put my life back together. I changed my locks again, installed better cameras, started sleeping with my bedroom door locked, went to therapy twice a week to deal with the trauma and anxiety and trust issues. Keisha checked on me every day. Aiden, my neighbor, kept an eye out for anything suspicious. My supervisor at work was understanding, gave me a reduced schedule while I recovered. Slowly, very slowly, I started to feel safe again. Started to feel like maybe I could rebuild what Tasha had torn down. But the guilt never went away. The knowledge that my own sister had hated me enough to terrorize me, that our relationship was so broken that this was where we'd ended up. I thought about calling her. Almost did a few times, picked up my phone and pulled up her number and just stared at it. But I never called because I didn't know what I would say. Sorry, I forgive you, I hate you. All of it was true. None of it felt right. 3 months later, I got a letter in the mail. Not an anonymous note, a real letter, in an envelope with a return address from Tasha. I almost threw it away without opening it. Almost didn't want to know what she had to say, but I opened it anyway. The letter was long, pages and pages of her handwriting. It started with an apology, a real one this time, not the desperate, defensive one she'd given me that night in my apartment. She wrote about how she'd been in therapy, how she'd been diagnosed with depression and anxiety and was on medication now, how she was working through the resentment and anger she'd been carrying for years. She wrote about Mama, about how hard it had been to watch her die, about how she'd felt abandoned by me even though she knew logically that I hadn't abandoned her, about how that feeling had festered until it poisoned everything. She wrote about our childhood, the good parts and the bad parts, the times we'd been close and the times we'd fought, how she'd always been proud of me even when she was jealous, how she'd wanted me to succeed even when she was angry that I got to and she didn't. And at the end, she wrote, I know you probably hate me. I know I destroyed any chance we had at being sisters again, but I want you to know that I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to understand why I did what I did and how to never do it again. I'm trying to forgive myself, even though I don't think I deserve it. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to ever want to see me or talk to me again. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. And I hope someday you can heal from what I did to you. You deserve to be happy, Monique. You deserve to feel safe. You deserve all the good things you've worked so hard for. And I'm sorry I tried to take that away from you. I love you. I always have. Even when I was hurting you, I loved you. I hope you can believe that. Tasha. I read the letter 3 times, cried through all 3 readings. Then I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. Not to forget it, not to forgive it, just to keep it. Because maybe someday, not today, not next month, maybe not even next year, but someday I might be ready to respond. Or maybe I wouldn't. Maybe this was the end of our relationship. Maybe Tasha and I would never be sisters again in any meaningful way. But at least now I understood. At least now I knew the truth. And maybe that was enough. 6 months after everything happened, I moved. Not far, just to a different apartment complex on the other side of town. Somewhere Tasha didn't know about. Somewhere I could start fresh. I decorated my new place carefully, made it feel like mine. Hung up photos, but only the good ones. Only the memories I wanted to keep. I kept one photo of Tasha and me, the one from when we were kids on the swings, both of us grinning at the camera. Before everything got complicated. Before the resentment and the distance and the hurt. I put it on my bookshelf. Not prominently, but there. Because she was still my sister. And maybe that would always mean something, even if we never spoke again. I got better at sleeping, sort of. I could manage 5, sometimes 6 hours a night now, as long as I kept the bathroom light on. Complete darkness still made my heart race, made me see shadows that weren't there. Started eating regularly again. Those certain foods, the brand of orange juice Tasha used to buy, the specific pasta shape I'd found missing from my pantry that night, still made my stomach turn. Gained back some of the weight I'd lost. Went back to full time at work, though I still flinched when someone touched me unexpectedly. Still had to count to 10 before entering patient rooms, reminding myself that I was safe, that no one was waiting for me in the dark. Started dating casually. That lasted 3 weeks before I had a panic attack in the middle of a dinner date, certain the man across from me knew where I lived, was watching me, was planning something. I'd excused myself to the bathroom and climbed out the window, reconnected with old friends, though I kept them at arm's length, kept parts of myself locked away. Couldn't quite trust anyone with the full story. Slowly, piece by piece, I rebuilt my life. But it wasn't the same life I'd had before. It was a smaller life, a more cautious life, a life lived behind locked doors and security cameras and constant vigilance. Every night before bed, I checked the locks. Not once, not twice, 4 times. Had to touch each lock, feel it engage, count them out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I lost count, I started over. I looked over my shoulder when I was walking to my car, scanned every parking lot, every sidewalk, every empty hallway for potential threats, carried pepper spray in my purse, kept a baseball bat beside my bed, avoided going anywhere alone after dark, and letters. God, letters. Every time I found an unexpected piece of mail in my mailbox, my hands shook as I opened it. My vision tunneled. My breath came too fast. Even junk mail. Even bills with my name misspelled. The trauma didn't just disappear. It lived in my body now, in my hypervigilance, in my startle response, in the way I couldn't relax even when I was safe. But I was learning to live with it, learning to function anyway, learning that survival looked different than I'd thought it would. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't healed, but it was mine. One day, almost a year later, my phone rang. Tasha's name on the screen. I stared at it for a long time. Let it ring and ring. I could answer. We could talk. Maybe start the long, difficult process of healing our relationship. Or I could let it go to voicemail. Keep the distance. Protect myself. Both options felt right and wrong at the same time. In the end, I answered. Hello? Monique. Her voice was tentative, scared. I hope it's okay that I called. I don't know if it is. That's fair. She was quiet for a moment. I just wanted to check in. See how you're doing. I'm okay. Better. Good. I'm glad. Another silence. Heavy. Awkward. I'm doing better too, she said. Still in therapy. Still on medication. I got a job. Nothing fancy, but it's something. I'm trying to build a life for myself. The life I should have built years ago instead of resenting yours. That's good, Tasha. I'm happy for you. Are you? The question was genuine, not accusatory. Yeah, I am. I want you to be happy. I always have. Even after everything? Even after everything. She started crying. I could hear it through the phone. I don't deserve your kindness. Maybe not, but I'm giving it to you anyway. We talked for a few more minutes, carefully, gently, like we were handling something fragile that might shatter if we moved too fast. When we hung up, I felt okay, not healed, not whole, but okay. Maybe that was enough. Maybe we'd never be close again. Maybe we'd never have the relationship we used to have. Maybe there was too much hurt, too much damage, too much history between us. But maybe we could find something new, something honest, something built on who we actually were instead of who we'd been as children. Maybe. That night, I sat on my couch in my new apartment, a cup of tea in my hands, and thought about everything that had happened. The fear, the confusion, the betrayal, but also the healing, the growth, the understanding. I thought about Tasha and how hurt she must have been to do what she did, how lost and angry and desperate. I didn't excuse it. What she did was wrong, unforgivable in many ways, but I understood it, and maybe that understanding was a kind of forgiveness, or at least the beginning of one. I picked up my phone, pulled up my photos, found that picture of us as kids on the swings. 2 little girls who had no idea what was coming, who thought sisterhood was simple and straightforward and permanent. I smiled sadly, set the phone down, sipped my tea. Tomorrow, I had a therapy appointment, and a shift at the hospital, and a lunch date with Keisha, and a whole life to live. A life that was mine. A life I'd fought to protect and rebuild. A life that included the complicated, painful truth about my sister and what she'd done to me. But it was my life, and I was learning to be okay with all of it, the good and the bad, the love and the hurt, because that's what healing was, not forgetting, not pretending nothing happened, but learning to live with the truth, learning to move forward anyway. And maybe that was the strongest thing I could do. Sometimes the person you fear most is the one who shared your childhood, the one who knows all your secrets and weaknesses, the one who loved you first and hurt you worst. But sometimes, not always, but sometimes, that person is also the one who can teach you the most about forgiveness, about boundaries, about the difference between family and safety. Tasha taught me that I could survive betrayal, that I could be broken and still rebuild, that I could love someone and still protect myself from them. She taught me that not all relationships can be saved, that sometimes love isn't enough, that sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away. But she also taught me that healing is possible, that people can change, that understanding doesn't mean excusing, and boundaries don't mean hatred. She taught me that I'm stronger than I thought, braver than I knew, more resilient than I imagined. And maybe, just maybe, that lesson was worth the nightmare I'd endured to learn it. I didn't forgive her, not fully, not yet, maybe not ever, but I was learning to forgive myself for not seeing the signs earlier, for not understanding how much she was hurting, for being the younger sister who got to leave while she stayed behind. I was learning to forgive myself for surviving when she was drowning, for having a good life when hers was falling apart, because it wasn't my fault. None of it was my fault. And accepting that, really accepting it, was its own kind of freedom. I finished my tea, rinsed the cup, put it in the dishwasher. Then I turned off the lights, checked the locks one more time, and went to bed. And for the first time in almost a year, I slept through the night without waking up in fear. That was enough. For now, that was enough.